Greetings, folks. Welcome to season 6 Talks Over Drinks. Was episode 2?
I don't know. I guess this will be 2. So
it's episode 2. Us. That's right. After us, episode 2. My name is Corey Fogonier. As always, my partner in Justice to God, Markel Franz. Yo, man, I have not seen you.
Seem like a different person, don't I?
Nah, man. I mean, you know, we have been. Our next guest is coming on. Is going to tell you all about this term. Markel has been a COVID-19 refugee. He was trapped in New York State. First of all, how's your mom doing?
She's doing well.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Good. Mom is doing well. Is Glenda doing well?
Yes, the wife is doing well. And she's getting better every day, I would say.
All right. Well,
but with this, of course, I know we're going to talk about the C word and the other shows and stuff, but there's some things about that a lot of people, don't know about until you actually go through it. So I'm kind of experiencing that now, having somebody at home that had it. So. Okay. But yeah, she's doing a lot better now.
Okay, well, definitely, I'm happy that you're home, because Mandy was like, you about to take the tractor and go up to New York, get Markel and bring him back. That's what we was about to do.
I've heard her tell me that a few times. Yeah. And it's crazy because when I was up there, it was days where I was like, man, I can't wait to get back home. But I said, I know it'd be a lot of work to do. And coming back to the show, that's something that I definitely look forward to. Got the lights in here. I'm sweating. It's feeling hot, but I feel like we back to business.
It's back to business. We had a little hiatus. So, as always, your food for action.
Yes, sir. Food for action. So, of course, I like to keep it light and simple, but it's really actionable steps. So that's why I call it food for action. So this right here is, in life, the furthest you usually have to travel for success is within. So I was thinking about that even when I was on my trip. Because you know how they say a lot of times you got to go back home? Well, they tell us as people, you need to go back to Africa. Right. Find your roots. Right. But New York is really where my roots is at. So when I went there, I'm like, this is what I left. And this is kind of like an infusion of energy. So
when you got home, because I know a lot of times when we go home, New York and New Jersey, and Mandy and I and the kids and the grandbaby are going home in a couple weeks, did you get to the point where you were like, I got what I needed to get, I'm ready to get back down the road. Like, I just want to go back to Virginia.
That's right. Because it was only supposed to be a 2-week trip.
Right.
So if it wasn't for the extra situations, I would have only been in New York for 2 weeks. But 2 weeks turned into 2.5 months. So even if you're on vacation, if you're having a good time somewhere on vacation, sometimes maybe 2.5 months might even be too much for your vacation. You're like, nah, I got to get back home. I haven't had enough.
I got you. Well, what I'm saying? I'm happy you're home. We've pushed this back as long as we can push it. Right. And I know we have a lot of catching up to do, so it's always good to be in your presence. We're going to cut to a commercial break. We're going to bring back our first guest, and he's going to bring us up to breast with what's going on in the House of Delegates race for Charlottesville and Albemarle. And we're going to take it like that. And this is Talks Over Drinks. My name is Corey Fogonier, the guy Markel Prines. Cheers.
Pull up a chair and let's chill. Let's party, let's talk and let's build. Yeah, alright, let's talk over drinks.
Welcome back to Talks Over Drinks. My name is Corey Fogonier. As always, my partner, the guy Markel Prines. And our first guest in this episode, this is Philip Hamilton. He is the Republican candidate running for House of Delegates, 57th District. You see a sign behind my head. The 57th District, for all of you that may not know, Charlottesville and Albemarle County, which is outside of Charlottesville. Philip, welcome. Thank you for coming all the way down to Richmond to hang out with us. We had the opportunity to meet through Mike Dickinson. Big up Mike Dickinson.
Absolutely.
Independent for sheriff in the city of Richmond. Tell us what brought you off the couch in order to decide to run for the House of Delegates in your district.
Well, that's a great question. And before I answer that, I just want to mention, it's almost 2 weeks until Election Day. And I did have some time on Friday night to watch Dave Chappelle's newest skit, The Closer, and it was fantastic. And I was laughing as I heard the beginning, and he was making fun of the whole COVID-19 pandemic. And yeah, I mean, these folks are saying, oh, you're at a bar and like you don't have your mask on, you're too close, like, ooh, those droplets coming out of your mouth. And, it's just showing how paranoid people are. And, I respect those who are immunocompromised and have, older relatives who are at risk of dying from the virus. But for a lot of younger folks, especially UVA college students, to go over the top and, have to wear a mask at all times on campus, I think is absolutely ridiculous. It's more virtue signaling. And my opponent, Sally Hudson, she will never fight against her own employer. So as these college students, fraternities, sororities, you name it, they've been dealing with all these very strict policies on campus. Sally Hudson's been very silent. And I have a lot of support of the youth and many other folks because I'm not beholden by UVA, and I will stand up to these COVID-19 restrictions, which includes mask mandates and vaccine mandates, because we got to respect people's choice to make their own medical decisions.
I understand that. So I know that you and I originally connected through Facebook. What prompted you to get up off your couch and actually get involved in a run for the House of Delegates in the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic was a huge factor.
Okay.
I think a lot of these mandates were unconstitutional, and I believe we need to have a law in the General Assembly that will limit the power of a governor to shut down schools, businesses, and churches.
Okay.
We have to have this happen. Because otherwise, if we don't limit it, then future governors, and even Republican governors, who knows, they might take advantage of this too, and they might say, well, we have a health crisis. We need to shut these institutions down. At this point, I don't trust either party to do the right thing. So we need to make sure that the General Assembly limits the power of the governor. And another thing I want to do too is, I had a lot of friends of mine who, they're drinkers just like myself,
okay.
So cheers to that.
Cheers to that. That's right, son.
And they're bartenders, and, they were adversely affected by the curfews that Governor Northam instituted last year. A lot of them became underemployed. A lot of them became unemployed. Because the thing is, you shrink the hours from 2 a.m. all the way down to 10 p.m. That's 4 hours out of their shift. That's every day. They're losing 4 hours.
Wow.
And I was actually in Richmond last year for New Year's Eve.
Okay.
And I remember I was, with Ruth, and both of us were at a bar, and they said, well, last call's at 9:50. I was like, so I can't even drink when the ball drops? I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Right. But unless you nurse your drink for like a 3.5 hour period until the ball drops.
And hide it under your coat, right? But that was a reality that they were facing. And I'm proposing, instead of just returning us to the status quo, which is allowing bars to stay up till 2 a.m., why don't we give bars and nightclubs more freedom? Why don't we allow them to stay open until 4 a.m.?
Okay.
In New York, which, you're from Long Island,
right.
The bars are open until 4 a.m. Miami, they're open until 5 a.m. And in Vegas, I lived in Vegas for 6 months, and I'm not a gambler, but I did go out and drink over there, and there's some bars that are open 24 hours a day. Now,
really?
I know Virginia's not ready for that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that might be a stretch.
Yeah. Well, how do you all feel about the 4 a.m.? You think it's a good move?
I'm good. So as I'm a truck driver, and I'm up crazy hours, and I always say on the show, it's never too early or too late for talks over drinks. So whether your drink is coffee, or your drink is Kahlua and milk, or your drink is an energy drink, I feel like you as an individual and a citizen of the United States should have the opportunity to drink whatever you want whenever you see fit.
At whatever time.
That's right.
Absolutely. And another thing I want to add to that, too, is that I support abolishing all ABC stores. I think that, there's both Republicans and Democrats who supported, basically, it's state-sanctioned socialism. government-run liquor stores, and I want to get rid of all of them. Now marijuana is legal, and now that we're going to have a lot of businesses that are going to be propped up that are going to be selling marijuana, I think that's going to make up for the tax shortfall that we're going to get from abolishing ABC stores. So I think now is the right time to do this. And another move I would take, too, is to allow distilleries to infuse beer and other alcoholic products with THC. When I lived in California, when I lived in Nevada, you could purchase products like that.
Like cocktails.
Yeah.
I've seen that in the stores around here. It was around for a couple of months, and then I didn't see it in the stores anymore.
Yeah, you haven't seen it?
Yeah, it was. They had it in a lot of gas stations, but the product was taken off, and I don't know what happened with it. But it was a pretty good cocktail. But I looked at it like it would be something that was going to be a mass entrance of a lot of companies making infused drinks, but that would be a good idea. I would like to see somebody do something about that.
And the thing is, I support businesses, and the thing is, in order to have more businesses, in the alcohol and in the weed industry, I think we need to expand the freedom of what type of products that they can make. It was interesting. When I was in Denver, Colorado, it was my first time ever purchasing marijuana legally. And when I went over there, they had massage oils, they had like lotions and all other sorts of products with THC infused in them. And I really, bravo to them, because they were thinking outside the box. It's like, It's not just consuming it orally or with smoke, but you can also put it in your skin, and there's a lot of health benefits.
Absolutely.
Just both CBD and THC.
Okay.
And I'm glad that more states are legalizing it now, or in decriminalizing marijuana. The next step we got to take is legalizing and decriminalizing on the federal level. Which I fully support. And if I do get elected, I would actually allow, make it retroactive, so that way folks who have possession charges, non-violent offenders, so that way they can be released from jails. Why are they still serving time for something that's now decriminalized?
Right.
So that's something that's going to help not just the minority communities, but all Virginians.
Right.
Anyone who's been charged with possession of marijuana.
What are your other? Because I had the opportunity to interview you for Virginia Right. What are your other platform issues that you like to share with our viewers that would differentiate you from your opponent, Sally Hudson?
Well, we had two debates this week. One with the NAACP, the local chapter in Charlottesville, and another with the Senior Statesman of Virginia. Now, the first question that was asked, which was by one of Sally Hudson's donors who gave $100,000 to her campaign. So, yeah, very unbiased moderator, I would say.
And she was a moderator?
She was the moderator. Wow. Unbelievable, right? And they asked, what is your stance on the removal of the Confederate monuments? And she said that she supported the removal. I said, no, I'm a historian. I believe in keeping our history in place.
Right.
But we also know, in that regard, the status quo isn't working. We should have monuments dedicated to the United States colored troops, to the 68 UVA Unionists who fought as sailors and as soldiers during the Civil War. And they all went to the University of Virginia.
Right.
Why not honor those folks? And Ulysses S. Grant and other Union leaders during the war. And I imagine that we would make Lee Park and the park by the courthouse where the Stonewall Jackson Monument was in Charlottesville more like Antietam and Gettysburg. So that way we're showing both sides of the conflict, and then we're educating people on the full scope of the war. And there was the Dahlgren-Kilpatrick raid, which occurred in 1864. And what happened then is that Custer was sent out to Charlottesville, and it was a diversionary tactic because they had a battle out in Rio Hill, which is just right outside of Charlottesville.
Right.
And that was done so that way the Confederates would send their troops out towards Charlottesville while the Union forces were out in Richmond trying to rescue 15,000 Union prisoners from Libby Prison. And they were also trying to assassinate Jefferson Davis in that same fellow swoop.
Okay.
It was a failed raid. They did not free any prisoners. They did not assassinate Jefferson Davis. However, they did burn down several farms, and they did rip up some train tracks along the way.
Okay.
But folks in the city council are saying that Charlottesville was not involved in the city war. And that is a complete and utter falsehood.
Okay.
And the Democrats are making this argument like, well, let's just erase history because, well, our town, our city is not involved with that. And for those who are ignorant of history, they'll just blindly agree with it. But I've done research, and I've seen that, General Custer, he was actually occupying a house in March of 1865 when Charlottesville surrendered to the Union. And it was just a mile from my old house.
Wow.
And there's a marker dedicated to that. It's called the farm. And there was also the rotunda at University of Virginia was used as a hospital. So there were a lot of folks who were injured in battle when there were fights in Gordonsville and out in Harrisonburg who were sent to the University of Virginia, and they were recovering.
Okay.
And there were both Confederate and Union soldiers who were buried in Charlottesville. And some of them re-interned to other cemeteries. But yeah, I would say that Charlottesville was very much involved in the Civil War. There's a better way forward that we can preserve our history and build on it. And another thing to add on to that too is that I've traveled to over 40 states in the country. And I would agree that there is not enough monuments dedicated to minorities. And I support 100% adding more monuments dedicated to minorities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Last weekend, I was at the Richmond Folk Festival.
Okay.
And for my first time, I got to see the Freedom and Emancipation Monument that was dedicated to those who fought against slavery and those who fought for equality during the Civil Rights Movement. And it shows a black man who's breaking the chains of slavery. And the chains are suspended in air. I mean, I thought it was very powerful.
Right.
And there's a woman who's right next to him who's holding a child. And then holding a book in her left arm. And I was thinking, I was looking at that monument last weekend. Geez, we need to have a monument like that in Charlottesville. Because in Court Square, they had a slave trade over there. And also at the former Swan Tavern. And I believe another spot as well. And there's a temporary exhibit dedicated to those who were auctioned off as property. And I propose making a permanent exhibit or a permanent monument dedicated to slave trade in Charlottesville. So that way we're looking at all different sides of our history.
Right.
Now, I'm glad that you brought up our history as a whole, because I believe that the keys to the future is in the past a lot of times. If you know where you came from, you'll have more of an idea of where to go and how to get to where you need to go.
Right.
When it comes to politics, we hear it all the time from different politicians, what they want to do before they get in or what they're going to do. And a lot of times we see they get a reality check. Now, they get a reality check once when they get in there. But just to go back to their history, with your upbringing, where are you from and where did you get your values from? Like when it comes to like your parents, were they political activists or what shaped your views?
Well, that's a great question. My father immigrated here from Iran before the Shah was overthrown in the 70s.
Wow.
And my grandparents had aunts, cousins, uncles, all from Iran. My Uncle Fred also immigrated from Iran as well. And my grandparents, when they were still alive, they would come and visit. And I remember my grandmother coming and giving me these golden bracelets from Iran. And I was just thinking, I was like, wow, this is from another country. You know, as a teenager. But I've never visited Iran myself. Actually, I have not left the United States yet, but I'm hoping to make, travel, up to Canada or down to Mexico at some point in the next 5 years.
Right.
But my values definitely, came from my parents. My mother, she was born in the Midwest, and my father met her when she was 19, and They got married, ended up having 7 children.
Wow.
I have an identical twin brother who still lives in Santa Cruz, California.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters. We learned the value of hard work. My father never gave any of us an allowance. He said, if you want to go out to the movies or if you want to buy something for yourself that's not food or a necessity, something for entertainment purposes, you have to go out and work for it. So I would go knock on the doors of my neighbors and say, well, hey, well, what type of yard work do you need?
Okay.
Do you need me to clean your house? And, I'm humble. I believe that, any work is valuable. So I did all that.
Okay.
Starting at the age of 14. And I got a work permit, and I was working at Baskin-Robbins while I was in high school.
Okay.
And I've been working ever since I was the age of 14. When I was in college, I worked my entire time through there. So my parents didn't give me any money for my college tuition.
Okay.
I did stay with my parents my first year, so they were helping with the room and board with me staying with them.
Right.
But then I decided my sophomore year, I'm like, well, I'm going to live in the dorms, and I'm going to live on my own for my first time. So I was working part-time and going to school. I got a degree in administration of justice. I got a paralegal certification through George Mason University.
Okay.
And I also got a master's in administration of justice security through the University of Phoenix. But a fun fact is I'm actually related to George Mason IV on my mother's side of the family. And he wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights, that the First Amendment, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion are all based off of. Mm. And I'm proud to say that I'm related to George Mason. I've been to Gunston Hall, which is where he's buried,
right,
and my other relatives. And I have deep roots in Virginia, and I've lived in the state for over 20 years.
So tell us a little bit about, because I know that you were, prior to COVID-19, you were in California. So explain to our viewers what happened and what brought you back home, and what kind of shape your perspective, especially with now you running for political office in your county.
Well, I actually worked on Senator Rand Paul's presidential campaign. I was working through a PAC called Concerned American Voters.
Okay.
So we were helping out his campaign through that PAC. So I was canvassing in Des Moines, Iowa, in Iowa City. Then they sent us out to Reno, into Las Vegas. And we worked until the day he dropped out of the race.
Okay.
In February of 2016.
Okay.
And instead of deciding to move back to Virginia, I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and move to Santa Cruz, California.
Okay.
So that's what I did. And the first week I moved out there, I actually got hired, and I spoke. I went to the Loudon Community Center, and that center is actually named after a former slave who donated over $300 to the public schools in Santa Cruz, California.
Okay.
And I got to see some newspaper articles dedicated to him that are in the archives of that city government building.
Okay. And
I was working for the Santa Cruz City Parks for a few months. And that was a good experience. I got to learn about the Sister City program, about these other cities around the world that Santa Cruz was affiliated with. And I'm 100% in support of that program. I think having an understanding of other cultures throughout the world is good for people who are working in our city and town governments.
Okay.
And I spent 4 years in California. And, of course, the pandemic hit. And it was very strange because Santa Clara County, which is where my legal services business was, because I was working as a court runner and processor, really is where the pandemic really started to take hold. The local government there started to shut things down. And I think it was the first county in the state to just really say, okay, we're going to shut down our businesses, courts, et cetera, et cetera. And I just remember going to court and I was like, gosh, the streets are empty. Because they would have this First Friday celebration every Friday.
Right.
And it was just quiet. There was hardly any traffic. And this is a very busy part of California. You'd be stuck in, traffic for 1 to 2 hours, just like you are in the D.C. area.
Right.
And there were hardly any cars on the road, and I was still going to work. But when I went back home to Santa Cruz, First Friday is still going on, and this is 45 minutes away. Hundreds of people on the street, people partying and having fun. But that only lasted for 2 or 3 weeks before they started shutting down the Santa Cruz too.
Okay.
But what happened is that they were shutting down beaches and like all these outdoor venues. And I was like, well, if we're trying to get better,
right,
why are people allowed to exercise? You know, I had a friend of mine who was fined for tanning on the beach a block from her home in Santa Cruz. And she said, I am not going to pay for this ticket because it's unconstitutional. And I said, go for you, man. That's something we need to stand up.
Right.
And just say the government is overreaching. In Oakland, California, they had these electric signs that were saying, oh, no ambient music allowed. I'm like, your cell phone. I mean, so you can't play music from your cell phone? I mean, that's...
Wow.
They're just trying to impose these ridiculous rules in California. And I end up losing 95% of my legal services business because a lot of the courts were closed. They were only accepting restraining orders, and you couldn't file a new like small claims or large claim suit. And the attorneys were saying, well, there's no demand because we are not allowed to file anything. And I wrote it out. I unfortunately was not able to pay rent for a couple of months, and it was really rough. And I said, you know what? If this is how Governor Newsom wants to handle the pandemic and really shut down small business owners and shut down the economy when there's a better way forward, I said, I'm out of here.
And that kind of leads me to my question, because I know when we came in, we noticed this saying over here, citizen legislators, not career politicians. So when we look at that, I guess this is a two-part question for me. One, if given the opportunity or if you had the legislative power, how would you have handled the rollout of this pandemic or trying to get us back to normalcy? And the second part of that question would be, what is the greatest asset or tool that you say that someone can help you with? Whether, would you say, is a politician helping you do something or individual citizens? What would be the greatest tool that you would have to help you get what you need accomplished?
Well, those are both great questions. And the thing is, we should have done a lot of things differently. And one thing I would particularly like to see done is a reform of the food stamp program to allow, because there's folks that I know who are in poverty, single mothers, and they're struggling. They're doing their best to get by, and they need help. And I understand their plight, especially because I'm friends with some who are currently in need of those programs. And we should allow folks who are on food stamps to purchase vitamins. I actually went out on lobby day and spoke to a couple legislators, and they said, "Well, that's vitamins are cheap. They're just $10. You can just go buy it. But if you're broke or if
you don't have $10,
yeah, if you don't have that money
right.
to spend on vitamins, you're only going to allocate to food,
right?
And
Yep.
we have to expand the program." So that way people can get vitamin B6, B12, vitamin D3, which is effective against COVID-19, zinc, and many others. Because the vaccine alone is not going to save you. You need to boost your immunity. And it's very bizarre because earlier this week, the Daily Progress, which is a local paper in Charlottesville, it was Tyler, the reporter, he said that I was spreading disinformation by encouraging people to eat healthier, to consume more vitamins.
No, that's part of it, because what happens is we don't eat properly, we don't exercise. So when your body is forced to deal with something that's out of the ordinary, your body doesn't know how to combat that. So eating properly, exercising can help you eliminate some of the need to have to deal with the vaccine or deal with like regular medication that's sent by the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, and I was joking with some of my supporters. I was like, "Wow, Big Pharma must be donating to Daily Progress." You know, if that's what their takeaway was from the debate.
That's right.
And the thing is, when I lived in California, there's a big hippie culture in Santa Cruz, and I met a lot of folks who are into holistic health.
Yeah.
And honestly, I keep an open mind to things. I was like, wow, you know what? Now I'm starting to eat healthier. I'm starting to eat more ginger root, turmeric, raw garlic, and my health has been better. I haven't had to go to a doctor for years. And dietary modification does make a difference.
Right.
And the thing is, we have to look at ourselves and say, what can I do to make myself healthier?
That's right.
And the thing is, government is imposing fear-mongering and social distancing and mask mandates. And instead, we should be looking in a different direction. Say, how can we make ourselves healthier? And not just injections. And the thing is, if you want to get the vaccine, that's fine.
Right.
I'm not going to stop you from getting that.
Right.
But for those who don't want to get it, like police officers who are objecting it, teachers, many other people who work in public service, and people even in the private sector. I oppose Joe Biden's order saying that you have to impose vaccine mandates if you're a business of 100 employees or more.
Right.
I think that's unconstitutional. We have to respect people's medical freedom of choice.
Right.
And we need more folks in office with the guts to stand up to Joe Biden and say that.
Right.
That's what I'm waiting for. When I hear different politicians, my main thing is we've been talking about the same issues and concerns for years, decades, centuries. And there's big organizations that basically fund a lot of the situations that we're in now, a lot of the negative situations. So Big Pharma, that's one of the biggest. I'm waiting for somebody to take the stance and say, this is what we're going to target. Because when it comes to COVID, like you said, when it comes to health, natural products, vitamins, if they stop putting the stuff in the food that they've been putting in the medication, if we get that straight, our health situation will be a lot better. If we get back to natural herbs, and I'm going to take this time just to do a little cheap little plug, natural stuff like sea moss. So, the big homie, Bars. He
nice.
got the Bars
That's
moss.
Right.
And, a lot of people say that stuff helps out. People take it on a daily, smoothies, whatever. But stuff like sea moss, natural products, stuff that you could take on a daily, doesn't have side effects. You don't have to worry about, okay, it's an 85% chance that it's going to protect me from this. This is healthy products, something that you don't have to worry about having complications. Because one of the other issues, as we were talking earlier about vaccines, yes, a lot of people might give the excuse that we've been taking vaccines for years, decades. But as I stated, it's when your kids and your babies are born, we've been giving those vaccines. Those have been tested 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 100 years. Now you're asking us to take something that's been out for only 6 months. We're the test subjects.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm gonna say for my own self, I had shingles, right? And I did the research on the shingles vaccine, and I went ahead and took the shingles vaccine. But the shingles vaccine it wasn't good for me.
Right.
So I had, the first shot was okay. When I got the second shot, it was like the shingles was coming back. It didn't do anything to combat the issues that I was having. Then the various medications that the doctor was prescribing didn't help. So what ended up helping me were vitamins. We're talking about L-lysine.
Yep.
We're talking about, I'm trying to think of what else I had. L-lysine.
Sea moss.
Sea moss from Bars Nice helped. Olive oil extract. And then there was a cream that my wife got me that had the same active ingredient that was in pepper spray. Everything that I took was natural. So I went to all these doctors trying to figure out, they're like, oh, you need to take this, you need to take that. And the main medication that the doctor gave me, it just made me feel worse.
Mm.
And it was a controlled substance. I don't even remember what it's called, but it was a controlled substance. I couldn't drive with it, so that didn't work. So all the things that worked for me were natural vitamins, herbs, sea moss, and things like that. So I can agree with you. When you have a health issue and you've tried everything, and what the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors push for you doesn't work, and you stand up and say, this works for me, but then people want to talk to you like you're wearing a tinfoil hat, and you don't know, what works for you. I mean, it didn't work. I tried it, and it made me feel worse than what I was already feeling. So I'm saying this is my course of action for myself. And folks are like, well, no, Corey, you can't do that because that doesn't fit the narrative of what I need to do for my own health. I mean, I'm not the FDA, but I know what works. So
that's right.
You know,
and this is another thing I want to mention. So earlier this week, there was an event with David Toscano, and he was the former delegate and the minority leader for the Democratic Party when he was in office. So he was doing a book sign event at the Paramount Theater. So they have a requirement saying that you need to show either your vaccine card, show us your papers, right? Yeah. Or show us a negative test within 72 hours.
Wow.
And I'm just like, well, why do the vaccinated don't have to show a negative test, but they can get sick too? And I was pointing out the hypocrisy of this. And I also said, well, I had COVID in January of this year. I have natural antibodies. I recovered from it. I had very mild symptoms. I did not lose my sense of smell or taste like other folks have. And I've had stomach flus that are worse than the COVID case I had. Well, that's because of the increased vitamin intake I have, and I exercise. So that's the reason why it was more mild for me, because I treat my body better.
Right.
And that's why I've been saying, these other folks, that natural immunity should count for something. But the Paramount Theater management doesn't think so. And they said, well, they asked me, how would you check for it? I'm like, well, I can pull up my email and show you that positive test that I had, and clearly I'm alive, so I recovered. Right. But they still kicked me out of the theater, and I was not allowed to go to this event with David Toscano. And I thought that was very unfortunate. I took a step further and said, you know what? Let's boycott the theater. If they're going to be this over the top over the COVID-19 mandates, folks shouldn't do business with them.
Right.
They need to feel the pinch in their wallet and realize that people do not want these kind of ridiculous mandates at their businesses, and that they should at least modify them.
Right. Yeah, any final questions?
I know we're going to wrap up this. It's a lot that we can touch on, a lot more, so we definitely got to have you back at some point so we can talk further. And after the election, hopefully you get the position that you want, so that you can do the things that you say you want to get done.
That's right.
So, of course, you're always welcome here. We're going to be watching. If you do get in the seat and everything, we're going to be watching, because one thing, I'm going to be honest. I hear a lot of people say stuff, and I want to see what they actually do when they get the chance. So a lot of people that we have, I'm rooting for them. I'm hoping that they get the positions that they go for, because if you don't do what you say, or even try to do what you say you're going to try to do, we going to check that situation. We going to check it, and we only want people that we have strong feelings about, that's really out there trying to do stuff for the community.
That's right.
And that's what we try to bring to you guys. People that we have faith in, that we can, say they have the right ideas. We know that when people get in positions, like I said, sometimes you get smacked in the face and like, you thought you was coming here for this, but this is what it really is. But somebody's got to break that barrier and be able to make the change that we need. So we're here to help as many people in our community as possible to find those individuals who are looking to be in those positions of power that's going to make the positive change. And I really don't have any other questions. I just wanted to make that statement. And we wish you the best.
Yep.
And hopefully you can get it done.
There is something else I do want to mention before we hop off, though, is that I'm half Iranian, and I've been canvassing since March of this year. And there's a lot of Middle Eastern folks that are supporting me. There's a lot of minorities. A lot of folks in the black community in Charlottesville are supporting me. They like the fact I'm pushing for a zero-tolerance body camera law. What that would do is it would mandate that any police officer who doesn't wear or doesn't turn on their body camera while executing a search, an arrest warrant, or even a warrantless search will be fired on the first instance. Now, the Virginia Benevolent Police Association decided to be neutral in my race because I said, I will never defund the police. I disagree with that.
Right.
100%. I believe police deserve a pay bonus, just like public teachers also deserve a pay bonus. But at the same time, we need police reform. What happened to Breonna Taylor last year never should have happened.
Right.
And I released a radio ad on the 1-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's passing, saying we need this zero-tolerance law. And another thing I'll mention, too, is that when I go and speak to folks door to door, I lead on the statement that I support term limits and that there are Republicans and Democrats who are in office for too long.
Right.
We need to expand it from the governor. We need to amend the Constitution so we have term limits on House of Delegates, Senate, school board, mayor, board of supervisor. And I think this is something that people want. And the majority of folks I speak to, whether they be Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Independent, they support term limits. And Sally Hudson does not. And she actually refuses to speak about it. She refuses to take questions about term limits during her digital forums and from my supporters who want to meet with her in person. And in fact, these 2 debates we had earlier this week, I mentioned term limits several times, and not a peep came out of her mouth regarding it. So she wants to maintain the status quo. And another thing, too, is that she supports gerrymandering. And whichever party is in power, they use it to reinforce their power.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
I would vote to abolish gerrymandering.
Yep.
I think if the Democrats are talking about, we need more fair elections, like, well, you're the ones who are getting rid of voter ID and you want to keep gerrymandering to solidify your own power.
Yeah.
So we got to point out their hypocrisy. And another thing I'll mention, too, is that Sally Hudson, she talks about affordable housing.
Right.
Well, how can you have affordable housing when you have runaway inflation, which the Democratic Party is responsible for? Gas is going up. The price of lumber has gone up under Biden's administration. And, energy. I think we're going to have 50% spikes in natural gas this winter. And the thing is, they got to realize that they could pump out all these government programs, but the more money we keep on spending on unemployment and, all these new green agenda and all these other things that they're pushing forth, the value of the dollar drops.
Right.
And what does it do? The rich, they're not really affected by it because they have plenty of money in reserve that they can pull from. It hurts the lower middle class, and it hurts those who are in poverty the most.
That's right.
So it's a hidden tax. And if she was serious about affordable housing, she'd be going out there and attacking inflation, but she is not.
Right. Well, for our viewers, social media, website, information to contact you?
They can reach me at hamilton4va.com, and that's hamiltonforva.com, or at Philip Andrew Hamilton for Virginia Delegate on Facebook. You can also email me directly at philiph4va.delegate@gmail.com.
Okay, well, Philip, pleasure to see you again. Appreciate
Absolutely.
you coming out all the way to Richmond. Corey Fauquier, Markel Prines, Philip Hamilton, 57th House of Delegate candidate, Republican Party, Charlottesville, Albemarle. Y'all get out there and do the right thing. We are Talks Over Drinks. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes, sir.
Hey, all right, let's talk over drinks.
Talks Over Drinks.
Toast over drinks, we can have a conversation. You can say what you think. I'm 40 plus and still rocking to this hip hop beat. Bring it live and direct right here from Broad Street. I pray that my lyrics do find you well, cause it's me, MSB, and a guy named Markel. The White Jason, you know he fan. Invite indie musicians, coming straight slam. I got swerving beat sounds on the ones and twos, and together, united, we gon' bring it to you. We the RVA Rap Pack crew. So take your pick, Comcast or YouTube. No disrespect, I don't mean to be rude, but these other talk shows can't do what we do. I stay with the lyrics, some call me Dread Dude. Difference of opinion should not be called sin. Tell the truth, yo Dread, where you been? Invest a few minutes, I hope you tune in, yo. Politics, economics, education. These are topics across the whole entire nation. Keep it 100, we gon' talk about them, yo. Bring your kids, tell your mama and a friend, yo, it's toast over drinks, toast over drinks. We can have a conversation, you can say what you think.
Let's talk over drinks. Pull up a chair and let's chill. Let's party, let's talk and let's build. Alright, let's talk over drinks. We over here keeping it real, saying exactly how we feel. Come on, let's talk over drink. Pull up a chair and let's chill. Let's party, let's talk and let's build. Alright, let's talk over drink.